Okay, let's get started. Grab a seat. As you can see, this sign is up, meaning the Clare Boothe Luce Center for Conservative Women is sponsoring today's event once again, and we're very appreciative of all their help in making this class possible. We have a brand new speaker with us today, brand new meaning first time here in Berkeley. Please welcome, this is Reagan Reese right here. As you can see, she was in your shoes not very long ago, a student, and now she is working as the White House correspondent at the Daily Caller, where she's been for the last couple years. So someone who, I was reading back in high school days, dreamed of being a journalist, and now at the ripe old age of 25 is already covering the White House. What an amazing dream come true. Reagan is a graduate of Hillsdale College, where she studied rhetoric and journalism, and she was the assistant news editor on the school paper. She's going to talk to you today about her job working in the White House, well, as a journalist, and we'll hear a little bit more about her dealings with the president, and we were just talking, she spent a year under Biden as well. So if you have any questions about that, the difference when what's going on. Please welcome Reagan Reese.
Hi, everybody. So quick introduction about me. Professor Ross covered some things. My name is Reagan Reese. I'm the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. I've been at the Daily Caller for 3.5 years now. Like Professor Ross mentioned, when I was 16, it was very obvious to me that I wanted to go into journalism. I had an unusual path to college because I played softball at Hillsdale College, so that kind of dictates how you can find where you're going to go to school. And I was able to find a great school that was going to allow me to pursue journalism, pursue softball. When I wasn't playing softball was a full-time job. I was pouring as much as I could into the newspaper and the radio station, and in the summer I would do my internships. Actually, the last time I was in California, I did an internship in San Diego. I was texting my dad about that on my way out here. We drove across the country in the middle of the 2020 pandemic, which was really interesting. Upon graduating, I took a fellowship at the Daily Caller News Foundation. That is our nonprofit organization, which is a training institute for young journalists. I covered education there for about a year, and I had no idea that I was doing a good job at all. And about a year into the job, I was approached by the editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller, which is our sister organization. It's a for-profit organization. They were looking for a White House correspondent. They wanted someone who was loyal, so they wanted to keep it in-house, and they offered me the job, and I had just turned 23 the week before, and I was the youngest one in the White House briefing room. And I mean, a lot of journalists work their entire lives for that opportunity. There was, as terrified as I was, as unprepared as I was, I said, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to challenge myself. And since I've been here, I've been under the Trump administration, covering the Trump administration for a year as the White House correspondent. Like Professor Ross said, I had the opportunity to cover Biden for a year. I got a chance to ask President Biden questions, Karine Jean-Pierre questions. We have a seat in the briefing room. Under the Trump administration, I've had the opportunity to interview President Trump. I spent an hour with him last month. I've asked questions of Caroline Leavitt. I've traveled with the president on Air Force One. I've traveled with the vice president on Air Force Two to the border. So lots of experiences that you're welcome to ask me about when we get to the questions. But they told me to prepare something on the state of the nation. And I was looking up different studies, different reports that organizations have done on the state of the nation. How do you measure the state of the nation? And they looked at different economic stats, they looked at the border, they looked at different policies, but none of those really captured what I was looking for. So today when we talk about the state of the nation, I want to talk about the soul of the nation. And I'll admit, on the plane ride here yesterday, I still had no idea what I was going to say when I came to your class. I've been wrestling with what is the state of the nation. And I think it bothers me so much. I think what has made it so hard for me, and I think while I'm talking to you today, you'll notice that I'm still processing as I'm talking to you and thinking while I'm talking to you about what I think about all of these things. I would argue that the state of the nation today is not great. You might agree with me. We might have different reasons for that. First I'll say that there are things that are an improvement from last year. The border crisis is virtually non-existent. Trump has taken a stance on transgender issues that is popular with most Americans. Internationally, the United States has played a role in ending foreign conflicts. There is peace in the Middle East for the first time in 2 years. So why would I say that America is not at a state of greatness as a girl who's been named after Ronald Reagan, who is the White House correspondent for the Daily Caller? Well, it's clear to me that I think politicalization is at an all-time high. It's too high, and I think America is very sick right now. In the last year, we've seen an assassination attempt on President Trump's life, Minnesota lawmakers murdered, a young Jewish couple gunned down in Washington, D.C., and most recently, Charlie Kirk murdered in broad daylight. After Charlie's death, I felt this was a moment we could all agree on. It was bad. He shouldn't have died. No one should have been murdered. There have been other high-profile deaths this year, which I think have impacted Americans, but within seconds, within minutes of Charlie's death, it was on Twitter, it was graphic, you could retweet it, it was viral. And I think that is why it became so large. I mean, without even speaking about who he was and the national figure he was. I thought that America was going to pause, America was going to reflect. We were going to maybe have this kumbaya coming to Jesus moment. But instead, things descended into chaos. Some celebrated, some blamed political parties, some blamed Trump, others blamed Democrats' rhetoric. Some claimed Charlie was still alive. Some said there was a foreign agent that did it. Some reshared the video of his brutal murder. Some called it revenge. Some called for revenge. Some called for prayer. Some called for more security. The list goes on and on. I was quite overwhelmed in the first couple of days, just logging on to social media, reading the news. It felt hard to do my job because there was so much chaos going on. The world, I believe, whether you loved or hated Charlie, was grieving what it was before his death. And now I've gone back and forth on how to react to his killing. The correct way, on a human level, is to live our lives as virtuously as possible. But on a policy level, what is next? This is what I think is still completely unclear. How does Washington react? There have been differing messages that have come from our leaders. There doesn't seem to be any bipartisan conversation about how to attack this issue, how to bring down the temperature in America. We've heard bits and pieces. We've heard some messages coming out of the White House. We've heard some messages coming out of Congress. We've heard some messages coming from governors and local officials. But in general, I think it's been rather scattered. And I think until this is addressed, until there is a real succinct effort to bring down the temperature, the politicalization of America, we're going to continue to be in this place where the state of the nation is not great. And it hurts me very much as a journalist, as an American, to tell you that, but also just, I think those are the facts. So as I've been pondering this topic, I started to think about, where do I fall in this conversation? What role do I play? What can I do? And then I started to think about, what is the state of the media? Now, I talk about this a lot, and I would love to talk about it more with you guys. I've written about what I've seen behind closed doors at the White House, different conversations that I've had with members of the press where I believe they revealed that they're not there for the American people, that they are crossing professional lines with sources and allowing themselves to be manipulated. Just the other day, I saw two reporters at a White House event texting each other, making fun of the subjects that President Trump had brought in to speak And then later, those are the same reporters that are going to go out and write a story bashing that event and tell you it's objective. But meanwhile, I'm seeing behind closed doors that they hate these people. They have an interior motivation that they're not sharing with you. The most important thing to recognize about the media, and specifically Washington and the White House press corps, and this is something I did not know, I was not taught in college, is that it's a business. The job, I often tell my sources, is to harass them over and over and over again until they give me the piece of information that I know, that hopefully I bring back to my editors, our marketing team, and they say, yes, this is gonna drive clicks, this is gonna drive subscribers. And you can see how that would affect journalism. You try as a journalist to distance yourself from that as much as possible, but ultimately, if I don't bring back the news, the juicy gossip to my boss, the thing that's going to get people to click on the page, I'm not gonna get paid. They're gonna let me go. This drives the media to make poor choices, to be first to a story rather than correct, to constantly be churning out content. Sometimes you can do this in just seconds on a live blog, on social media. It creates this never-ending news cycle that can feel suffocating, that leads to the state of our nation not being great. And it's often heartless. I don't have very long to think about the tweet or the one piece of information that I'm about to fire off. None of us do, and the lives that might impact. And that's something I think we as journalists need to think about and really internally reflect on. In Washington, another thing that the media does is the mainstream media picks their 2 to 3 topics of the day and they hammer them. They beat them to death. If you watch a Caroline Leavitt briefing, if you watch a Donald Trump presser, you'll notice that those big outlets pick the same topics. They ask the same questions in different ways over and over and over again. It's beyond the point of holding truth to power. This exposes another problem. This exposes groupthink, an obvious disconnect from other perspectives in the country, or just simply ignoring other issues that Americans want to talk about. After the Biden White House, there was what I would call an epiphany, maybe a coming to Jesus moment. Most of the media had announced or admitted that they had done a poor job covering President Biden, that they had let it slip by, that he was 81 years old and not up to the job anymore. The media's reflection admitted that they were gaslit, that they maybe didn't press sources hard enough when they were asking about the president's decline. But instead of taking this admission and reflecting inward, to me, if this had happened to me, I would have looked inward. I would have thought to myself, okay, I was biased to these sources. I might have a larger bias at play here. I might be biased towards this subject of people, this certain party, whatever. And I also might be biased towards President Trump, towards Republicans. I might push them super hard and I might go easy on President Biden. Instead, what I've seen is the complete opposite. The media has used this to go even harder, to hammer, like I mentioned, these 2, 3 big topics instead of maybe opening themselves up to different perspectives. So what we've seen is the Trump White House try to remedy this. They have tried to bring in new voices, what I call the new media, podcasters, outlets, other journalists, social media influencers, you name it. It's now a very, very busy White House briefing room. They want those people, these different perspectives, which ultimately, I would argue, helped bring the Trump White House, bring the Trump campaign to the White House. They want them to have a perspective at the table. They want them to sit down and they want to represent these voices, not just the ones that watch the mainstream media. But I also would say that the new media has work to do. They're also playing into what I would say the overall message here is that the state of the nation is not great. Conservatives in the new media, we can sit here all day and complain about the mainstream media. You guys might not hear it as much. I hear it all the time in the circles that I'm in Washington, D.C. They are always frustrated with the biases, the constant harsh questions on President Trump. Fine, that's part of the job. We should absolutely be checking each other as journalists. But if that's just step one, if we have now, the new media has now gotten a seat at the table, has now been entered into the White House, it's time to get in the game. It's time to ask questions that the middle Americans want to know. Ask those hard questions from the right, that criticism that President Trump is getting from the right, and to rival those legacy media outlets that we see Republicans complain about so much. You need to build up something of integrity, of infrastructure, of seriousness that ABC, CBS, Washington Post, CNN, you name it, have. So that has brought me to where I am now. The Daily Caller is right in the middle of the new media and the mainstream media. We have a seat in the White House briefing room. It is in the last row. It's very hard to be seen. I sit on a booster seat when I go to the White House briefing room and wave my hand like a maniac. We've always been allowed in the White House press pool. So if you're not familiar with that, the White House Correspondents Association is a third party, essentially what I like to call a union for reporters. And that kind of dictates who gets a seat in the briefing room, who gets a tent and an opportunity to set up their cameras outside of the White House. And they also dictate something called the White House press pool. When you're covering the White House, not everybody can go in every room. The Oval Office is not as big as it seems, and neither is the White House briefing room. And so the White House Correspondents Association has set a rotation of 12 journalists or 12 or so journalists that are allowed to cover the president every day. It rotates if there is a trip, if there is an event where only a certain number of journalists can go in. The White House Correspondents Association keeps that rotation of journalists. The President Trump and his administration took that over. But the Daily Caller has been a part of this press pool for many years. We have been in the White House covering the White House since the first Trump administration. I come from a long line of distinguished journalists. I love to say that Caitlin Collins on CNN was the first White House correspondent for the Daily Caller. There are many journalists who have come after her who have gone on to be serious, fair people from the Daily Caller. And so it puts me in this position where I'm right in the middle of the new media and the legacy media. And like I just said, it's my job to get in the game, to constantly be reflecting on my craft, to be slower to stories, to be knocking down accuracy, to build up more sources. This is something I really want to do, build up more sources in various political circles. Give everyone a fair shake. It also means being honest about my bias. I think it's much healthier for our media if we start to admit where our biases lay. I think journalists are some of the most knowledgeable, educated people in America. It is my job to sit and scroll Twitter, to read stories, to talk to people, and essentially know every single fact, every single detail about what is going on in America, in different stories. And so, of course, journalists are going to gather all the facts, and you're going to form your own opinion. That's human nature. In fact, I think journalists should, being some of the most educated, informed people in the country, they should tell people what they are thinking. And I think that's a good way to remedy some of the problems we see with the media, is to be upfront about what we think about stories, and then leave it to you, the reader, to decide what you think about our reporting, what type of facts, maybe we're admitting something, maybe you think in my reporting, am trying to point you towards a certain conclusion, but you can be much more educated as a reader if you know that bias, and that's something I think we're lacking in the media. I've talked about me and my role. Now I want to talk about you guys, the students at Berkeley. because I think you guys play a very important role, if not the most important role, in how we fix the state of our nation. Ultimately, I've decided that I'm not here today to lecture you on the state of the nation. I'm over the fear-mongering. I'm over the doom scrolling, the sensationalism. I'm more interested in, as an American, as a member, a young professional in public service, how we fix this and what you guys play, what the role you guys play in healing the nation. I mentioned at the top of this lecture that I'm 25, that I did my I started the White House role when I was 23. That was just a year after I graduated college. I thought that being young and the most inexperienced one in that room was going to be a disadvantage for me. It has been quite the opposite. Yes, I think us as young people don't have as much experience as some of these adults. Maybe we shouldn't be spouting off our opinions left and right because we're yet to really live and learn things. But you do offer a fresh perspective. And young people is what is driving the new media, what is driving these changing environments. You know how many White House correspondents, how many 40, 50, 60-year-olds I see trying to work TikTok right now because they know that is where they need to be, that they need to be catering to young people because young people are the future. And I also tell you this because it's quite possible that you, in a year, could be a big player in Washington, D.C. if you wanted to. Young people are in such high demand in Washington, and you should absolutely embrace your age and where you are in your youthfulness, what you know about your generation. Now, the other role that I think young people play besides just being young is talking to each other. I was very bothered by the fact that I came to the conclusion that the state of our nation was not great. I gave my mom a call. She's the most optimistic, hopeful, faithful person I know. And I was expecting my mom to be like, oh, things are great. Tell them it's great. Tell them it's great. And my mom, too, told me, I don't think things are great. But you should tell them that there is hope. And why I think there is hope is that we're having this discussion. I'm here talking to you today. And that's the first step. I think what we need to do, what you need to do as young people, is talk to as many people as possible. Soak up all the knowledge that you have right now in college. Go and have conversations with people. We are on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, and you can scroll and scroll, you can read the news, and then if you see someone that you disagree with, you can fire off a quick tweet, you can argue with them without ever looking them in the eye. But I think the solution to making our nation better is having civil conversation, is exposing each other to different disagreements, to having the ability to exchange ideas compassionately, civilly. I was at my Bible study the other day with two of my closest friends from college, and we were talking about women's roles in America, how women have been treated, what's women's roles in corporate America, et cetera. And we disagreed. And normally, I would sit there and bite my tongue. I'm a political junkie. Not all of my friends are in the political sphere of Washington, D.C. And I've been told a couple of times, like, please don't bring politics up when we go to this dinner. Please don't bring politics up at Bible study. But I've decided over the last couple of weeks that I need to just start engaging with people. You need to start saying to people, oh, I might not agree with you, but why do you think that? Okay, you don't have to get in a back and forth discussion with them, but simply exposing each other to difference of opinions, to talking these things out is a good way to mix our nation up, to make sure we're not so isolated, that we're not so hateful towards each other. And I actually think that this generation is probably some of the best at that. We're pretty good at vocalizing how we feel, what we're thinking. So maybe it's talking to your parents a little bit more, or maybe you come across, I don't know, the cashier at the grocery store, people who are a couple years older than you, and you just expose them to your ideas too in a civil, respectful way. I think that is really part of the solution to making our nation great.